The revelation of my wife's infidelity hit me like a sudden thunderstorm on a clear day. The day began as usual: work, family, and shared laughter. Little did I know that the foundation of our 8-year marriage was about to crumble. I stumbled upon the truth in the most mundane of ways. The lost phone, the unattended notice left unattended, the evidence was there, and there was no more denying it. When I met her gaze, the air in the room grew thick with tension, and a palpable silence hung between us. "Why?" I managed to whisper, confusion and resentment audible in my voice. She looked at me, avoiding my eyes as if the answer could be found in the patterns on the carpet. "You did it first, didn't you?" "Then," she replied, a protective note in her voice. The irony didn't escape me. My teenage transgression, a mere blip in our long history, was now being used as an excuse for a much more serious betrayal. I felt a prick of regret for revealing this dark chapter of my past at all. "But that was different," I objected, feeling a growing frustration. "I stopped it before it went too far. I chose you." There was a bitter silence in the room, broken only by the distant sounds of the city outside the window. The weight of the truth hung over her, and the air crackled with unspoken words. "Is cheating the same regardless of anything?" I asked, and the words echoed through the room like an accusation. She finally met my gaze, and her eyes reflected a mixture of defiance and remorse. "Maybe you did, or maybe it didn't. But it happened, and now we have to face it." And there it was, an acknowledgement of broken trust, a recognition that something irreversible had happened. This revelation began a journey through the wreckage of our marriage, with no certainty of what lay ahead. After the revelation, I found myself picking through the shards of the life I had carefully built. The promise of being the best husband she could rely on seemed like a distant memory as I picked my way through the rubble. Late that night, as the weight of reality weighed down on me, I told her about the breach of trust that cut deeper than any wound I'd known. The dim light in the room cast shadows on her face that I thought I knew so well. "How could you?" The question hung in the air, laden with the agony that had become its constant companion. She sighed, her eyes avoiding mine, unable to meet the gaze that was drilling her soul. "I don't know, you know? It just happened. Things have changed." The simplicity of her answer only intensified my pain. Years of sacrifice, of putting her dreams and ambitions first, seemed to crumble under the weight of her confession. "I gave you everything," I muttered with a mixture of disbelief and sadness in my voice. "I put my life on hold to support you, to give you a chance to fulfill your dreams. Isn't that enough?" Her silence spoke volumes. It was a painful admission of unspoken resentment that festered beneath the surface. The echoes of unfulfilled promises echoed resoundingly in the room, drowning out any semblance of the love that had once bound us together. As we came to terms with the harsh reality, we had a question: had it all been for nothing? Was the promise of being the best husband possible nothing more than a naive dream shattered by the cold truth of infidelity? The chapter of our lives that once held the warmth of shared dreams and whispered vows was now evidence of a broken promise. In the weeks following this revelation, our once solid relationship continued to crumble. The air in our home became thick with tension, and subtle changes in her behavior became more and more apparent. It was the slow destruction of the life we had built, and I felt like a spectator in my own story. One evening, as we sat across from each other in the dimly lit living room, the weight of unspoken words pressed down on us like an oppressive force. "I don't understand why you did it," I admitted, frustration and despair mixed in my voice. She looked at me, her expression a combination of guilt and defiance. Maybe I'm tired of being the one who always has to compromise, who has to put things off for the sake of the family. Those words hung in the air like a bitter admission of the resentment that had been quietly growing between us. The sacrifices I'd made, the dreams I'd put off, now seemed like a one-sided deal. But we were a team, I objected, and desperation rose in my tone. I was supporting you so we could build something together. Why throw it all away? She sighed, her gaze shifting to a point behind my shoulder. Maybe I wanted something different. Something more. That admission pierced me like a knife. The life I thought we'd built together, the dreams we'd shared, now seemed like a facade. The unraveling continued, and I began to question not only her actions, but the very nature of our connection. Days turned into weeks, and the emotional distance between us grew. The love that had once been the pillar of our marriage seemed like a distant memory. It became increasingly obvious that the foundation we thought was unshakable was actually built on fragile ground. As the destruction continued, I clung to the hope that we could find our way back to each other. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come, and the true extent of the damage to our relationship would soon be laid bare. The destruction of our marriage reached its zenith when I stumbled upon the truth about her year-long affair. The revelation hit me like a sledgehammer, each word echoing in my mind, shattering every vestige of the life we once shared. Facing her, I demanded an explanation, and the air grew heavy with a sense of finality. How could you keep this up for a year? And how can you compare this to what happened in the past? She looked at me, a cold detachment in her eyes devoid of remorse that sent shivers running down my spine. You did it too. You hurt me, and I didn't feel guilty. The comparison struck me as a cruel twist of fate. My youthful mistake, fueled by confusion and quickly stopped, versus her calculated betrayal that had lasted a year. The difference seemed insurmountable. But it's not the same, I objected, and despair crept into my voice. I felt shame and guilt and regret. I chose you and gave you everything. She responded with a cold shrug of her shoulders, a dismissive gesture that made it clear she didn't see the difference. Is it really that much of a difference? You did it. I did it. What's the big deal? Her words weighed on my shoulders like an impossible burden. The shattered comparison of our actions haunted me, making me question not only our marriage, but the very essence of morality. As the truth unfolded, the depth of her betrayal became more and more apparent. A married man with everything to lose versus a woman who seemed to revel in the destruction of her own life. The realization that she'd continued her affair while I'd fought for our relationship, oblivious to her actions, made me feel not only broken, but cheated. It's not the same, I repeated, with only a whisper of the conviction in my voice that once defined our love. The shattered comparison echoed in the room for a long time, reminding me that the consequences of infidelity are measured not only in actions, but in the irreparable damage done to the trust that once bound us together.